بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So this is the third lesson on the series, which discusses the story of Moosa عليه السلام with Firawn. And in the previous lesson we covered the stage in which Moosa عليه السلام was in the land of Madian, and he spent 10 years in Madian, and he had agreed with his services had been used in order to look after the flock and to water them and so on and so forth. So he got married in the land of Madian and he spent 10 years. And we mentioned how he desired to go back to see his family in Misr, and on his journey, when he was making his way to Misr, then this is when that event took place, when he saw a light in the distance, a burning light in the distance. And so we covered all of that story, where he went and he saw this bush that was burning, and Allah Azza wa Jal spoke to him, and he showed to him a number of signs. So first of all, Allah Azza wa Jal informed him that there is none which has a right to be worshipped except him. Then he ordered him to establish the prayer, and likewise he informed him to be aware of the hour. So he informed him with three things: Tawheed, As-Salah, the prayer, and the Yawmuddin, the day of judgment, the day of resurrection. And on top of that, he then also showed him two signs. The first sign was his staff, which was turned into a snake, and the second sign was his hand, which became extremely bright and very, very shiny, and it illuminated the area. So these two signs, all of these affairs were basically a preparation, because Allah Azza wa Jal announced the messengership of Moosa alayhi salam by way of this, and he was ordered to go to Firawn and to admonish him and to advise him and to warn him of the hereafter, and for him to leave his oppression and leave his arrogance and to release the Bani Israel, because he had enslaved them. So in the previous lesson we looked at that issue, and we also saw how Moosa alayhi salam, he made a supplication for Harun, his brother, to be sent as a prophet, as a minister with him to speak on his behalf, because Moosa alayhi salam had a speech impediment. He was unable to speak properly. So we got to the situation where Moosa and Harun alayhim as-salam, they came to the Firawn, and when they came to the Firawn and the initial dialogue which took place, we saw that Moosa alayhi salam, when he came to Firawn used a number of false arguments. And one of the points that we made in the previous lesson is that when we study the stories of the messengers and the people to whom they were sent, and we look at the dialogue that takes place, the dialogue as it is presented between the prophet or the messenger and the disbeliever or the polytheist or the tyrant, in the case of which is the Firawn in this case, we can see that there are many, many types of false arguments which are employed by the people of falsehood, and these are brought to our attention in the case, in the course of the actual dialogue itself. So from the previous lesson we picked out three false arguments before Musa alayhi salam even began to argue and to debate with Firawn. So from them was, the first thing that we mentioned is that Firawn, he began to mock Musa alayhi salam and said about him, وَلَا يَكَادُ يَبِينَ وَلَا يَكَادُ يُبِينَ, that he is unable even to express himself. He can't even speak and express what he wants to say. And so here, this is more like a belittlement on the basis of a personal quality, an impediment, a flaw or a fault. And so this is not really a valid argument. You can't criticize someone and reject the argument purely on the basis of a flaw that they might have. Maybe their vision might be weak. Maybe the speech might be, there might be some stutter in the speech, or there might be some other physical impairment, or there might be some. All of these are false arguments. This cannot be used to reject or to deny the truth which a person may bring. The second false argument that was used by Firawn is that he tried to use a favor that he had given to Musa alayhi salam. As you know in the story, Musa alayhi salam was taken and he was raised in the household of Firawn. He was fed, he was clothed, he was looked after, and then he went into the custody of his mother because she breastfed him. And then Firawn, he spent from his wealth upon his mother and Musa alayhi salam himself. So Firawn, he tried to remind Musa alayhi salam of this favor. He said to him, did we not raise you in our household? And were you not born and raised in our household as a child? And you spent many years of your life among us. And so, in other words, he's trying to say that I've got a favor over you. I've got a favor over you. You owe me a favor. And because you owe me a favor, I don't need to listen to whatever truth that you're claiming that you are bringing. And so this now is another type of false argument. Right? These are false arguments that we will encounter whenever we, for example, you will see parents, for example. You see a person becomes a Muslim. He was formerly a polytheist. He becomes a Muslim. And then he tries to advise his parents. And he says, oh, my parents, do not worship Jesus. He was no more than a man who walked the earth. He was a messenger, a prophet, but he was not a deity or a god. Do not worship him. And then the parents might respond, didn't we raise you up, and didn't we look after you, and didn't we feed you, didn't we clothe you? This is not a valid argument. This is not a valid argument. Okay, this is a favor that you did, but this favor it cannot be used to reject the truth. And so you can make the same analogy with all other types of disbelievers, polytheists, Hindus, and so on and so forth. This is a type of argument that you see frequently taking place from parents or from close relatives when a person invites them to the truth. They bring the favor and they bring this argument. And the third false argument that was used by Firawn was that Musa alayhi salam, he fell into that deed when he was when he killed that man who was arguing with another man from Bani Israel, and he killed that man and he fell into error. He fell into a mistake. And Firawn, he recounted this to him. He said, وَفَعَلْتَ فَعَلَتَكَ الَّتِي فَعَلْتَ وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. Firawn said to him, you did that deed which you did, and you are from those people who were ungrateful. Meaning that because of that man that you killed and you violated the law in our land, you are from those people who are from the ungrateful people. You were raised in this land. You were brought up in this land and we raised you. And you did this deed, this criminal act. And so you became from those people who are ungrateful. This now is a third argument now. So what is this argument? The argument is that you did something wrong previously, so therefore I don't need to accept the truth that you are bringing. This is also a false type of argument. It's a false type of argument. So this means that again, let's go back to the same parable, same similitude. A person becomes a Muslim, his parents are polytheists, maybe they are Christian, maybe they are Hindus or something, and he tries to advise them, he calls them to Tawheed, and so they now bring some iniquity or some crime that he fell into or something that he did where he was ungrateful to his parents. Right? So they might say, did you not do such and such? And you really hurt us and harmed us and we forgave you and we this and whatever. Again, this is not a valid argument. This is just an emotional argument. An emotional argument either when you try to impress someone because you bestowed favors upon them, or an emotional argument where you try to bring something in which you were harmed by that person. Right? So all of these are false arguments. And in the Quran, all of these false arguments which are brought by the people of shirk and kufr and dalala, they are all mentioned and brought out within the stories of the prophets, which is why we should study these stories very carefully and in detail, because it allows us to see these false type, the batil that the people come with. So before any argument has taken place between Moosa alayhi salam and Firawn, we see three false types of arguments. So just because a person has a defect, he has a flaw in speaking, for example, or it might be something else, that is not a valid argument to deny the truth. And just because you bestowed a favor upon someone, you have the upper hand over someone, that's not a valid argument to deny the truth. And just because someone might have fell into a crime or some sort of some sin or some crime, that likewise is not an argument for you to deny or reject the truth. So these were the three arguments that were used by Firawn in order to deny and to reject the truth. And this brings us now to the start of today's lesson. So we start today's lesson from this point, continuing from where we left off. And so now we come to the actual dialogue. The dialogue between Moosa alayhi salam and Firawn in terms of the actual argument. The argument about Tawheed, the argument about Allah's rububiyyah, that He is the Lord, that He deserves to be worshipped, and those which are worshipped besides Allah in the land of Misr by the people under the rule of Firawn, that all of these are false deities. So we start then, there are two parts in the Quran where we see this dialogue which are mentioned. The first is in Surah Ash-Shu'ara, the 26th surah, and we're looking here from verse 23 onwards, and also in Surah Taha, which is the 20th surah. So we'll spend some time inshallah ta'ala on these two dialogues, and we'll bring some kalam from, this is from Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, and likewise from Imam As-Sa'di rahimahullah. They have some nice commentary on both of these passages. So we start with the question of Firawn. So Firawn has been invited by Moosa alayhi salam to worship Allah Azza wa Jal and to abandon his tyranny and his falsehood and to release the Bani Israel. And the first part of that, the starting point of that, is obviously the issue of Tawheed. And in the land of Misr, as we mentioned in the previous lesson, there were people, the system that they had was that Firawn said, وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, I am your Lord Most High. And the Mufassirun, they explain that the people there had lots of deities, and what they would do was to serve those deities and worship those deities, but only as a means of gaining access and become closer to Firawn. So in other words, there were lots of deities that were worshipped, but Firawn was the greatest deity, because all of the other deities were simply a means of access to Firawn. And so they were worshipped by the people with the understanding that as long as they keep devoting themselves to these deities, whatever they might be, in the form of statues and idols and in the form of cattle and whatever else, they'd be worshipped. and they would allow them access to Firawn. So Firawn was the greatest deity. So Moosa alayhi salam invited him to the Lord of the worlds, because they said, indeed we are messengers from the Lord of the worlds. So this now is the response of Firawn. He said, قال فرعون وما رب العالمين وما رب العالمين. What is the Lord of the worlds? And then the dialogue continues. So let's read the dialogue and we'll come back to it inshallah. قال فرعون وما رب العالمين. Firawn said, what is this Lord of the worlds? What is this Lord of the worlds? And so Moosa alayhi salam responded, قال رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إن كنتم موقنين. He is the Lord of the heavens and the earth and whatever is in between them, if indeed you have certainty. Then Firawn said, قال لمن حوله ألا تستمعون. So Firawn said to the people around him, are you not listening? Are you listening to what he's saying? And so again, we'll pick up that this is another type of diversion away from the actual argument. Then Moosa alayhi salam said, قال ربكم وَرَبُّ آبَائِكُمُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. Your Lord and the Lord of your first forefathers. He is your Lord and the Lord of your first forefathers. Then Firawn responds, قال إن رسولكم الذي أرسل إليكم لمجنون. He said, indeed this messenger of yours who's been sent to you, he is mad. He is mad. He is majnoon. So in this dialogue, there are many things that we can take from this dialogue. And we should try to relate what we see in this dialogue to the kind of arguments that we see today which take place between the people of Tawheed, likewise from the people of Al-Ilhad, from the atheists and the disbelievers and other than them, because there are many parallels between these two affairs. So the first thing that Firawn said, he said, وَمَا رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And Ibn Kathir says that this Firawn, may Allah disfigure him, he tried to present rejection of a creator, right? So in front of all of his court and the people, he tried to proclaim the rejection of a creator, of the maker. So this is essentially like atheism. There is no deity. And he claimed that he himself is the Lord Most High. As we see in another part in the Quran, فَحَشَرَ فَنَادَى فَقَالَ أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. That he called and he gathered all the people and he pronounced to them, I am your Lord Most High. So he denied that there was any other Lord besides him. And in saying what he was saying, he was mu'anid. He was mu'anid. Meaning that he knew full well that he himself, he is marboob, al-makhluq, al-masnu'. Right? That he is marboob, meaning that he is one who has been created and nurtured and made and fashioned. Right? This is something that each person knows from himself, that he didn't create himself. Every person knows that you didn't create yourself. And every person knows that humans did not create the means by which they come into existence. The means by which you come into existence is reproduction, right? From a fluid, from a male, and something from the female, right? So it's impossible for you to create yourself, and it's impossible for you to create the means through which you came into being as well, right? So every person, it's a self-evident truth to each individual that you know that you did not create yourself, nor did you create the means through which you created yourself. And that you are created, that when you look at yourself and you look at everything from your eyes, your ears, your faculties of thinking, the internal organs, just the physical, the physical features, the hands, the limbs, everything that you see, that you reflect upon, You see, all of that is made for a purpose, for a goal. It fits in with everything else. It all works together, right? So a person knows that there is something behind this. There is something behind the creation of man. This is evident. So Firawn, he knows all of this. And so he is simply saying, وَمَا رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. What is this Lord of the worlds? This is this is mu'anada. This is just pure, deliberate rejection and opposition. Stubborn opposition. That's the word. Mu'anada. Stubborn opposition. So in response to this, Moosa عليه السلام, he stated, قال رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إن كنتم موقنين. So he said, the Lord who is your Lord, the one which you are denying, he is the Lord of the heavens and the earth and whatever is in between them. إن كنتم موقنين, if you have certainty. Now the scholars, they explain the meaning of in kuntum muqinin. And what this means is that if you were to have certainty in anything, in any issue, meaning that if you were to be convinced about any one thing, the fact that you can even have certainty about any one thing, right? Then the certainty about Allah is even greater. Meaning that it's not possible for you to have certainty about anything from the things in which you can have yaqeen, except that the certainty that you ought to have in Allah is even greater. Right? Meaning that if you can have certainty in anything, like for example, if you have certainty that you exist, if you have certainty that you are in this place, whatever thing it might be, just the mere fact that you are able to have certainty in anything from the affairs, that in itself, your ability to have yaqeen in anything, that's a proof that the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal is absolutely certain. Because there is no certain thing greater than the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal. It is the most apparent and manifest of all things. So that's why in the argument responding to Firawn, his arrogance, when he said, what is this Lord of the worlds? He said, the Lord of the heavens that you see and the earth that you are upon and everything in between, if you have certainty. If there's anything you have certainty in, then this is even more certain. This is the greatest of the certain things. So really here, the argument here then in the first response is the argument of looking at the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the basic argument. That when you look at the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, then you see in the creation such affairs, such wisdoms. There are wisdoms, there are purposes in things. There is, you know that there are some things which exist for another thing. We could say, for example, if we take the human, for example, we have the heart, it serves a function. The heart pumps blood, the blood goes to different organs, the liver, the kidneys, the brain. Without the heart, those things cannot function. And then the brain, the way that functions, it controls all of the physical, the movements of the body. And so what we see is that everything is connected to something else. Right? So this thing, the brain has been made for something else, and the liver has been made for something else, and the heart has been made for some other purposes. So everything has a purpose, and it can't just be put in isolation. Right? So that means there is choice, and there is intent, there is ikhtiyar, and there is qasd behind the creation of just man. This is just one entity that we are looking at, the man. Right? And then obviously there is ilm, and there is wisdom, hikmah, because things are done for purposes and goals, and these goals exist. Right? So when we study things, we always speak in terms of language where this thing is a goal for that thing, and this thing serves that goal, and this thing. And this is something you will see clearly. You just pick up any scientific paper studying any topic, and you just read the descriptions, and you pick out these verbs, and you every time without fail you'll see words which clearly indicate end goals and objectives and purposes and wisdoms, right? You'll see this all the time. So this language is something that we cannot escape. The language that we use to study and analyze and describe the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, it is something within which it is impossible not to use words which clearly imply wisdoms, purposes, goals, objectives, right? And behind that it means that there is knowledge behind this, there is will behind this, there is wisdom behind this. So the argument here is that the heavens and the earth and whatever is in between is empirical evidence of the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal, meaning its mere existence is proof for the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's as simple as it is, right? The proof that Allah exists is the insan, is you. You are the proof. So when we have a jahid, a mu'anid, a denier like an atheist, where's the evidence for the creator? Well, you are the evidence. That's you, the artifact, you as an individual. Just like if I was to say that this bottle is empirical proof of the one or the company or the being or whatever who brought it and put it in the way that it is now. Now that's undeniable because the bottle never came into existence itself, right? There is someone or some group or some whatever who are actually behind this. This is self-evident. So in a similar manner, just the insan himself, the mere existence of the insan, you as an individual, you are a specimen of Allah's creation. And that's the proof that He exists. It's as simple as that, right? At the basic level. Then we can go many, many levels down, because as time progresses, as knowledge increases, then the signs of Allah become even more and more apparent. So when we go into the cell and how the cell is, the structure of the cell and all of the information that it runs upon, and how the analogies are like computer networks and databases and random access memory, and all of these you will find in the papers now that biology, life is an information science, right? All life runs on information, and it is an information science, right? And in fact, let's pause on this for a bit, because you will see the kibr, the arrogance of the disbelievers, because before they realized that there is information that is behind life, the ideas that they had initially was just, how can we generate peptides, proteins, just through random mixing of chemicals and physical processes, right? So they weren't aware that there was knowledge, information that is running biological life, right? It's information, right? So before they were thinking, how can we just generate randomly these types of molecules? So as we progressed into molecular biology and the gene, and at the same time, they were also making advances in computers and computer networks. So there came a point when they realized, hang on, what we are learning about computers and information and, it's the same thing that we're discovering in biology, right? So as they discovered the DNA and they keep, moving forward in their knowledge, they came to a point where they suddenly realized, which is more recently, that all of biology, it basically is an information science. It's all about information, right? So now the issue becomes even more problematic, because before you were just trying to randomly create proteins, peptides in the lab by, engineering the conditions and try to bring them into existence, because that's what you thought, that's how complicated life was. And obviously they failed miserably, and they still fail miserably today. But now it's gone a level high, because now you have to basically engineer you have to bring about information. So now when you read what these people are doing, you have to laugh at these people, right? You have to laugh at what these people are doing and what they are saying and what they are claiming. Because they're saying, okay, let's discuss how can we randomly generate information? How can we find a naturalistic way of bringing information into existence? Right? And this just shows you the complete arrogance, the complete stupidity, the complete foolishness of these people. Because when you think about information, bringing information, information implies that there has to be someone who is the knower of that information, if you know what I mean. It's like if I said to you, if there was a magnetic board, if you imagine a magnetic board, do you remember those when you used to play as a child with the letters and you put them on the magnetic board? Everybody used to have those, right? So imagine that if you put a message on the board and the message says something like, I don't know, any message, I can't think of anything, butterflies are wonderful, whatever, I just made that up, right? Now, you have to ask the question, this is clearly a message, it's clearly information, right? It's information which has a meaning. How do we explain how this information got there? Can we explain it by way of the magnetism? Does the magnetism explain the information? Or can we say, oh yes, this is very easy to understand. We know why that. We know why that's there. It's clearly because of the magnetism. Right? And we've understood magnetism. We've studied it. It's a force. It's whatever. Right? So we've got the answer. Is that a valid? Can you explain information like that? You can't, can you? Because the information is independent of the medium, right? You could have scratched it onto a wall, the same information, right? The scratching is not the information. The information has to come from where? An alim, one with ilm. There has to be a knower, as in K-N-O-E-R, right? A knower of the information, right? So do you understand? This is what they're trying to do now. They're trying to say, oh yeah, we need to study and find ways as to how can information arise. And this is from the greatest of their arrogance, right? Because we know from our study of life, biological life, that there is an alim, there is an alam behind this creation. Just by default, right? So when they study the cell, the DNA, the genes, and they see that the DNA is basically a database, so basically the DNA is like an oracle database, and then basically the RNA, the messenger RNA, which copies, it's like a RAM, it makes a random access memory. So this is like when you run your software, it just copies the software into memory and then it runs it. This is the same for messenger RNA. It copies, right? Then it goes and it creates proteins and things like that, right? So these analogies are the exact same analogies which are there in the information sciences of biological life. That's where they are right now. So this, by default, it means that there is a knower and a creator, and whose creative power is tremendous. Right? It's as simple as that. The proof is already established. After this now, it's all just false arguments and false rhetoric, and that's all there is after that. There's nothing beyond that. So, the point being that Moosa alayhi salam, he informed him that the heavens, the earth, and whatever is in between, this is a sign of the Lord of the worlds. Right? This is a sign for Allah's rububiyyah, if indeed you have certainty in anything. So, now we see the counter response. And so from here, Firawn, he said, his response to this was, قَالَ لِمَنْ حَوْلَهُ, he said to those people who were around him, he said, أَلَا تَسْتَمِعُونَ. Right, so this now is from the angle of mockery and belittling him and making fun of him, right? Because he's not responding to the actual argument, right? He's just saying to the people around, oh, have you heard what he's saying, right? And this is the same thing that you see today. A lot of these very arrogant atheists, you will find that it's just mockery. It's just rhetoric and mockery. Haven't you got over religion yet? We don't even want to talk to you because you haven't even got over religion yet. Forget. So basically, it's derision, it's mockery, it's just belittlement, it's arrogance and whatever else. And see the same thing. So this is one of the responses when you point to them clear, manifest proofs and evidences for the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal, for which there exist empirical evidence, right? So this is empirical evidence, right? That each insan, every individual is an empirical piece of evidence. A fly is an empirical piece of evidence. It is different to a cat, for example, which is different to a bat, for example. And this argument will come in the Quran itself in a short while, in Surah Taha, the same type of argument. So we see that Allah Azza wa Jal is the Lord of the heavens and the earth and everything in between, which means the clouds, the winds, the stars, the rain, the plants, the animals, everything we know that it didn't bring itself into existence. It had a mujid, it had a muhdith, it had one which originated it, which brought it into existence. So this is the Lord of the worlds. So Firawn, meaning Firawn, قال لمن حوله ألا تستمعون. Do you not listen to what he is saying? So the answer of Moosa alayhi salam was not to be put off by the mockery, because the intent behind the mockery and the intent behind in these types of arguments is that people will try to create a diversion. They'll bring a diversion, right? Because they know where the discussion is going. So then there'll be a diversionary tactic. In this case, it's a mockery. To mock him and belittle him. So Moosa alayhi salam, remember, the messengers and the prophets are guided by Allah Azza wa Jal in clarifying the truth. And so Moosa alayhi salam did not waver. He was not misdirected. He went straight for the argument. So the next thing which he said, رَبُّكُمْ وَرَبُّ آبَائِكُمُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. He said, He is your Lord and the Lord of your very first forefathers. So think about, there's two arguments now. The first argument is the signs in the horizons, what you see of the heavens and the earth and what is in between. And the second now is the signs which are you and within you as a person, right? These two types of evidences and signs are mentioned in another ayah in the Quran. And that's why we see the Quran explains the Quran. In some places, the generalization is detailed in another place with specific details. And in other places, the specific details in different parts of the Quran are generalized somewhere else. And this is from the beauty of the Quran. So notice how here, Moosa alayhi salam, he's using the two types of arguments that Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in another ayah in the Quran at the end of Surah Fussilat. The end of this surah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. We shall show them our signs in the horizons. What you see in the horizons? You see the heavens, you see the earth, and whatever is in between, right? And in their own selves, within themselves, until it becomes clear to them that this is the haqq, the truth. Right? So there are two types of evidences. You look at the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal in the horizons, and this includes all of the phenomena, the sun, the moon, the alternation of the night and the day, the winds and the rain, and so on and so forth. And likewise, you look at yourself. You look at yourself, your creation, your faculties, and your organs and everything, and how you enjoy tremendous benefits, and how everything within you is created for a purpose and a goal and a wisdom. And so here, Firawn, when he rejected that argument of what is in the afaq, the horizons, then Moosa alayhi salam, he then moved to the argument that is closer to himself, which is you now as an individual in yourself. So he said, رَبُّكُمْ وَرَبُّ آبَائِكُمُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. your Lord and the Lord of your very first forefathers. What is the meaning here? The meaning here is that He is the one who created you and who created those who came before you, of the forefathers, and going back and back and back. And every person knows he did not create himself, and nor did his father or his mother, because they themselves were created, by the same means. And all of that going back all the way to the beginning, then this was with a creator, a muhdith, and a mujid, one who originated that and brought all of that into existence. So here we come back again to another point at which we stop, because the atheists and the arrogant disbelievers, they are trying to engineer the generating life in the laboratory, and generating life from non-life is physically, biologically, chemically, rationally impossible. It's impossible conceptually speaking, because there are multiple. Have you ever heard of the chicken and egg? Which one came first? Right, eggs come from chickens, but where did the egg come from? Because you need an egg for the chicken to come out of, but then the chicken itself needs to have an egg. So which one came first? The chicken that created the egg, or the egg that created the chicken? Right? Do you understand? So how does that even begin? Right? So this is what you call a chicken and egg situation. Right? So these people, when they study the biological life, and you look at the first reproducible cell, then there are multiple chicken and egg scenarios, right? Where you need this protein and this other molecule, but that molecule cannot exist except with a protein, like a ribosome or something, right? So we can't have this unless we have that, but we can't have that unless we have that. Do you understand? Right? So there are multiple systems like that which are tied into each other. They've got to all be there at the same time. Right? You can't have, okay, let's wait for the protein to be formed, and once we've got that, then we know we can create this. But you can't have that. You can't have that. You can't have this unless you have that, and you can't have that unless you have this. Do you understand? Right? So they realize this. So it's, as I said, it's very funny and amusing to read these papers of these people and just to mock their intellects and their stupidity, right? Because what the problem is that all of this is so detailed, so technical, it's all cryptical, right? And you think that these people are onto something, but when you reduce all of these layers of complexity and whatever, and you reduce it down to the very simple, what is it that they're really trying to do? What is it they're trying to do? It's only then that you see the stupidity of these people and the arrogance of these people, right? But that's what they're trying to do. So they're trying to do something which is impossible, right? And then what you find is you have like maybe 10 different groups. All these groups are trying to pursue a different method, right? So one group will say, let's try the messenger RNA first situation. Let's see if we can make that work, right? Another group will say, well, actually, let's see if we can start the protein method first, right? Other people say something else, and other people say something else. So they're all going in different directions, and each one of them is refuting the other one, right? This one is saying, oh, this is false, so this is ridiculous, it's not going to work. And that one over there is saying, oh, messenger RNA, ridiculous, we've proven it can't work, right? And this one is saying something, oh, clay, whatever, right? So they're all refuting each other, and the reason is because all of them are false. None of them can work. They're all false, right? So what will happen is they'll keep going like this for the next 10 years, and the 10 years after that, and the 10 years after that, and they'll keep making these promises, right? We are close to discovering the answers to life, right? All of this is kadhib. It's kadhib. It's deception. It's lies to make you think that, that there isn't a mujid and a muhdith, right? It's all flowery, deceptive speech. Right, and because it's so technical, so cryptical, and most people don't understand what's going on, and people have a natural, people are naturally, they obey authority. Right, this is the nature of people. You just obey authority. So because you think these are the specialists, they know what they're saying, whatever else, really, if you know the language that they're speaking, they don't. They are clueless. And they are totally lost. Right? So, the point being here that the second argument now is that you as an individual, as a specimen of Allah's creation, right, you are a proof that you have a Lord. Right? And that you didn't create yourself, nor the means by which you came into existence, and all of that returns back to a creator. And so as time goes on, we only gain more and more yaqeen in these realities, right? Even though before it was just a simple reality that everybody would know just looking at an insan, that this man is makhluq, marboob, right? It's just evident, self-evident. But as we progress in knowledge, this becomes even more evident, right? As we progress in our knowledge of how life is, what it, how it runs, how it functions, and so on and so forth. So here now the second argument, Moosa al-Islam, he now brought the argument to himself, the Firawn, look in yourself and your forefathers, right? You are clear evidence that you are muhdath, and that you are originated, you were brought into existence. So as we said, these two types of arguments are the ones mentioned at the end of Surah Fussilat. So all of the evidences, they either are those which are in the horizons, or they are those which is the study of Allah's creation and the phenomena, or they are that which is the creation of man himself. And that's why in the Quran, this is one of the major arguments about the origin of man from a sperm drop and how he's created, right, in the womb. And all of this is a sign of the creative power of Allah Azza wa Jal. So here, Firawn has been rationally defeated. Right? Here the argument ends, because when we look at what comes next, we see that in relation to both of these types of evidences, the Firawn was unable to bring a counter response. In the first response, he used mockery. Right? Ala tastami'un? Are you not listening to this man? Meaning that, look at this foolishness and what nonsense is he talking, and And in the second response now of the Firawn, he said, قال إن رسولكم الذي أرسل إليكم لمجنون. Indeed, this messenger who has been sent to you, he is majnoon, he is mad, he's mentally ill. Right? That's the same thing that you see today, the atheists saying that religious people, they are mentally sick, they are mentally ill. This is a mental disease. Religion is like a drug. It's the same thing that they say. And this is from their arrogance. It's from their arrogance. Because, as we said, it is evidently the case that there is knowledge, and there is will, there is ilm, there is ikhtiyar, there is qasd, there is intent, there is qudra, there is power, there is hikmah, there is wisdom. All of these things are evident from just anything that we pick up. We look at an insan, a human. We look at a leaf or a tree. All of these things are very clearly evident that there are these attributes are behind all of this, right? So his response now is, this messenger that's being sent to you, he is majnoon. So now Moosa al-Islam, he brings another type of argument, a rational argument. So now he responds with, so remember, he's not deterred by the mockery or accusing him of being mentally ill. Right? So he's not deterred from any of this in the argument. Now he goes for the third thing. So the third thing now is, قَالَ رَبُّ الْمَشْرِكِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. He is the Lord of the East and of the West and whatever is in between them, if indeed you have any intellect, if you understand, if you grasp or understand. So now there is appeal to another type of evidence, a rational evidence. What he's alluding to here, as Ibn Kathir explains, is that this now is speaking about, like the notion of East and West is the motion of the sun and the moon and the stars and the night and the day. Right? So the notion of east and west is all tied to the day and the night, the sun and the moon, and the motion of the stars. Because this is what we witness and what we experience. We see that the sun and the moon, they have a motion which moves from the east to the west, and likewise there is an east and a west in general, as we see in the Quran, an east and a west, as we see in this ayah. Then there are two easts and two wests, and the two easts and two wests, as the scholars explain, is in winter when the sun is in a certain point when it rises in the east, it's like further that way, and then in the summer it goes further back that way. So there's two extremes of where the sun rises from in winter and summer. Those are the two easts, right? At sunset and sunrise. So that's Lord of the two easts and the two wests. And then we have the Mashariq and the Magharib, the Lord of the easts and the wests. That is the 180 odd, the individual points at which the sun rises and sets on the other side. Each of those on every day is a point in the east or a point in the west, in between those two extremes. Right? So east in general, west in general, then the two easts and the two wests, and then the individual easts and wests. Right? So all of these, so this is one aspect here. Second aspect here obviously is the day and night itself. So the night and day is also moving like that, and the night and day increases and decreases as well. And likewise we have the motion of the stars as well. So all of these are connected phenomena. They all are basically working together. So all of these, Moosa alayhi salam is indicating they are under Allah Azza wa Jal, they are under his control, under his subjugation, under his regulation, and all of these affairs proceed in accordance to precision and timing, and like clockwork. Everything works according to clockwork, and all of this is clear evidence of the maker, of the mudabbir, of the khaliq, malik, mutasarrif. Right? This is clear evidence. These affairs are clear, manifest evidences. As for what they say and what they tell us today about the Big Bang and the so-called solar system, all of this, ya ikhwan, is pure conjecture. Right? The Big Bang is batil. There was no such thing as a Big Bang. Right? This Big Bang, some priest looked at some equations of Einstein, which are just mathematics with no connection to reality. Right? And this priest from Belgium is looking at these equations. Oh, I can see a cosmic egg in these equations. An egg which exploded. Right? So he comes up with this idea of the Big Bang. And then they start conjecturing, saying, well, if there was a Big Bang, then we should see this and this and this. Then they conduct experiments to see if they can see this and this and this. Now this is a fallacious form of argumentation in science itself. Right? Because this is to do with science, to be honest. I don't want to go into the details, but if you look at the way they construct their theories, right, you can see that there's false types of reasoning which underlie the way that they develop these theories. Let me give you a quick example. If I said to you, if the floor is wet, then I know it's been raining. Is that correct? Why is that not correct? Well, floor being wet could be any other reason. It could be because someone just washed his car. It could be there could be some condensation due to the cold in the morning. The condensation, it drips off the house or the car, and the floor is wet. Right? So when you look at the way they construct the evidence for their theories, they're saying, well, if there was a Big Bang, we should expect to see cosmic background radiation everywhere. Then they try and find, do we see cosmic background radiation? Yes, we do. Therefore, there was a Big Bang. Right? But if we make that argument in simple terms that you and I can understand, this is the example I've just given you. Like if I said, if there is blood on the walls, this is evidence for the Cyclops monster. Yeah? We see blood on the walls, therefore there is a Cyclops monster. Do you understand? Right? If the Big Bang, just something imaginary they made up, right? Looking at equations which have got no connection to physical reality, right? If the Big Bang is true, we should see cosmic background radiation. Then they will do that and they will find cosmic background radiation. But the argument is not valid, right? Just as like in our example, there's blood on the walls, therefore there must be a Cyclops monster. Well, the blood on the wall could be sort of a whole host of other different reasons. It doesn't have to fit into that model or that theory that you're trying to bring. Do you understand? Right? So this is how they're constructing the arguments. It's basically it's by predictions. You can make a prediction, right? Not by falsifying, not through falsification, right? So basically you can come up with an idea and you could be just guessing. Then you can make all of these predictions for that idea, and all those predictions might be true. But all that's happening is you're just being pushed further and further and further into just complete nonsense, because you haven't used other methods of science, which is like falsification and things like that, whatever. Yeah. So anyway, the point being that what I was saying was, that what these people have today of the Big Bang, right? All that is complete and utter batil. There's no such thing. There was no such Big Bang. There is no evidence for a Big Bang, right? And they realize this and they know this because there are thousands, the last time I counted, over 1,000 scientists who have written and signed. You can find it on the web. They've written a declaration that we reject the Big Bang because it is full of just invented particles, invented forces. It's not real science. It's just imaginary fairy tales, basically. That's what they're saying. That the model is false, and you're just inventing new things because you know it's false to keep it alive, right? This is where the idea of dark matter, dark energy, black holes, all of this, these are just inventions to make fools out of us, right? So among the scientists are those who've actually realized we're just going in this dead end, in this direction where everything's just now become like, it's like games, and it's just it's a joke, become a joke, right? Can't explain anything, just invent a particle. That we have this particle, that particle, and they're all inventing new particles, right? Because the direction they've gone in, they know it can't work, right? The whole gravity thing, it doesn't actually work, right? Because, and we won't go into all that. Anyway, ya ikhwan, this is what they teach in the schools, whatever, but it is batil. It is false. They don't know how creation originated, right? And so on and so forth. So here, the argument of Moosa alayhi salam here is by mentioning the east and the west. This is alluding to these phenomena as indicated by Ibn Kathir, to the phenomena of what we see connected to the east and the west, right? The day and the night, the alternation, and the stars, and the sun and the moon, and these phenomena. So basically, who is the one who has made all of these precise motions, like clockwork, routinely, day in, day out, year in, year out, right? Who is behind this? There is a power and a force behind this, and it is your Lord, the Lord of the East and the West, and whatever is in between them. So now the hujjah has been in kuntum ta'aqilun. Again, once more, the scholars explain that if there is anything which you are able to grasp and understand with your aql, then the existence of Allah and His Lordship by default is established as something that can be understood, right? If you can understand one thing from the affairs, then that is an even greater thing that should be understood. That again, the scholars explain that. So now we see, what do we see? We see these arguments from the rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal, the clear signs of the rububiyyah of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? These types of evidences are empirical evidences. This is the way of argument of the prophets and messengers. All this other stuff that you hear about, the ontological argument and the cosmological argument and all of this other stuff which are from the philosopher, right? this is not used by the prophets and messengers. Those are the weakest types of arguments. That's why you'll see the people of Kalam, the people who are Juhal, they use those types of arguments because they are weak. They are very fine, long-winded. You just get into wrangling and debates with respect to them, right? But the type of argument of the messengers and prophets, it is based upon, it's empirical, right? It's like me saying this bottle there exists on this creation the maker of this bottle. And you can't argue with that. You can't deny that. Because it's an undeniable argument, right? And so the argument of the prophets and messengers is by using the actual artifacts of Allah's creation, which is you and me and the sun and the moon and all these things. It's a very simple, powerful argument. And that's why these people, they will mock you. They will mock you for using these arguments because they have no answer, because it's a valid, rational argument. It can't be defeated. Right? Like Ibn al-Qayyim says, you can't deny that there are wisdoms, there are hikam in creation. Right? Meaning that there are end goals and purposes and wisdoms and things are made for each other and for each other and whatever. All of these are hikam. There are millions and billions of them in Allah's creation. And they are within our realm of study. Right? So you can't deny that there is hikam. And that implies knowledge. The attributes of knowledge and wisdom and choice and intent. So these attributes must belong somewhere. Where do they belong? They belong either to a being or they belong to nature itself. Right? So this bottle indicates knowledge, wisdom, will, power. Those attributes either belong in a being external to this bottle or those attributes belong to the bottle. Right? So all an atheist is doing, the only escape he has is to say those attributes belong to this bottle. And that means that he's majnoon. He's lost his intellect. Majnoon. Right? That's exactly what is taking place, but they've got very sophisticated methods of hiding all of that. They hide it all with flowery, deceptive language. Right? That's all there is to it. So now, the hujjah has been established upon Firawn by way of these arguments. And yeah, that's what they're doing. Yeah. Well, that's why they call Mother Nature. They're basically making nature the creator. As Ibn al-Qayyim says, why are you calling it tabi'ah, nature? Why didn't you call it with its name? It's Allah, the creator. Why are you taking these attributes and just putting them in nature? Nature is either matter or the attributes of matter, right? It's either the essence or the sifat of the essence, right? So you can't attribute to matter wisdom and knowledge. You can't do that, but that's what you're doing, right? So why are you calling it tabi'ah and things like that? Just say it's Allah, Lord of the worlds. That's all it is, right? So basically that's what they're doing, yeah. And as for the billions and billions of years, well, they need that, even though that's false as well. It's not possible, right? Anyway, so now the hujjah has been established upon Firawn. Allah's rububiyyah has been established, and the implication is that you must worship Allah alone, abandon your arrogance, abandon the false deities among your people, and worship Allah alone. The hujjah has now been established. So what does he say now? He says, قال لئن اتخذت إلها غيري لأجعلنك من المسجونين. So now look what he says. Now the argument, he's defeated the argument. He said, if you take a deity besides me, then I'm going to imprison you. I'm going to put you in prison. This now is the threat of violence. Right? So look at all of the arguments. We start from the very beginning in this story. He mocked Moosa alayhi salam for not being able to speak properly. Number one. Number two, he tried to use a favor that he had over Moosa alayhi salam, in that he raised him in his household. You owe me a favor. False argument. Third one, you committed a crime. You killed a man in our land. You were ungrateful. You were from the disbelievers, meaning kafir, meaning ungrateful people. Right? false argument. Then he used the argument of the rububiyyah of Allah in what we see in the creation of Allah. What did he say? Mockery. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this man. Look at this fool. Are you listening to what he's saying? Belittlement. False argument. Not even an argument. Then he told him to reflect in himself his own creation. What did he say? He said, Majnoon. Look at this Majnoon. This man is Majnoon. Madness. False argument. Then he basically brought him another type of argument about the precision and the control of Allah over the phenomena of night and day and so on and so forth in the form of east and west. What did he say? Right, if you do not accept me as your ilah, you're going to go to prison. Now it's the threat of violence because you are bankrupt in evidence. Right? So this is what he says. And then Musa alayhi salam, he said, قَالَ أَوَلَوْ جِئْتُكَ بِشَيْءٍ مُبِينٍ. Even if I came to you with some clear evidence, clear sign. Right? So this now is leading to the signs that Musa alayhi salam was given in order to show to Musa at the right time. Right? So remember, all of this, the manhajul anbiya fi da'wati ila Allah, the methodology of the prophets in calling people to Allah, it is guided by Allah. And that's why these prophets and messengers, in the way that they call their people, you will see that there is a specific method and a way. And you can see that clearly in the story of Moosa alayhi salam. Now the time has come, he's denied all of these rational arguments and he's tried to divert by all these false arguments. We've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 false arguments. Now the time has come to show him an actual ayah, a sign. Maybe that's going to convince him. Maybe that's going to show him that indeed Musa alayhi salam is in fact a true and real messenger. Right, so this is where we are leading to next. And what we'll do is we'll stop at this point. We haven't got to the second argument yet from Surah Taha. Inshallah, we'll take that up in the next lesson. And we'll conclude our lesson there for today, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll continue in 2 weeks' time, inshallah. In the context of the argument, it appears to be Musa alayhi salam, but that does not mean that it cannot be Harun alayhi salam conveying, but I think in the course of this specific argument, it appears to be Musa alayhi salam. Allah knows best. Okay, we'll conclude there, inshallah. We'll continue in 2 weeks' time. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.